This is a Hope 1032 podcast.
As followers of Jesus, in whom all things were made, we acknowledge the Darug people as the traditional custodians of the country on where this podcast is recorded. We recognise their continuing connection to the land and waters and thank them for protecting this land and its ecosystems since time immemorial. We pay our respects to elders past, present and future, and we extend that respect to all First Nations peoples listening today. Warning. This episode contains mentions of suicide and mental illness. Listener discretion is advised, and if you need help, Lifeline is available on 13 11 14.
Normally when someone gets released, there's 1 to 2 officers that will walk you to the gate, unlock you and see you later. That night, I had about 8 of them to come to get me. And I remember before he unlocked the door, he looked at me and he goes, listen, we wish that a lot of the inmates were like you. You make our job much easier. We don't want to see you back here, but we want to say thank you for what you did. And I knew then, I thought, wow, you know what? I've impacted them too. Treat others like the good Bible says, treat others like you like to be treated. And that's what I did.
I'm Georgia, and welcome back to another season of Finding Hope, the podcast that reminds you of the good in the world. Each episode tells a story of someone who has found real hope in challenging times and made the world a better place. Episode 41, Peter de Prinzio. On paper, Peter de Prinzio's trials and tribulations are enough to make anyone fall apart. Jail, being cheated on, mental health battles, a suicide attempt, and a cancer diagnosis. But Peter doesn't see it that way. He sees everything he's been through as another opportunity to show the world who he really is, someone who never gives up. Peter is a motivational speaker and mentor, spending his days inspiring others with his story, and I'm really excited for him to share some of that story on the podcast today. Let's meet him. Peter de Prinzio, thank you so much for joining me on the Finding Hope podcast today. It is an honour to speak with you.
Thank you. A pleasure to be here, and it's an honour for me.
Peter, there is a lot to get to in this episode. You've had the most remarkable life, and it's not over yet by any means. But what you've been through almost seems like something out of a movie script, to be honest. So I just want to start with an introduction. Who is Peter de Prinzio? If you met a stranger in 5 minutes, how would you introduce yourself?
Wow. Okay, I've never been asked that question before. I'm a guy who was a school dropout. Don't have any school certificate, high school certificate, college, university degree, but I qualified on the University of Life Lessons, and with honored, with honors and everything else. Yeah, look, I mean that's just me. I'm a never give up man, and I was instilled. I had that in me. I never went to any type of formal, about what I do today. It was just God gave me that blessing, and at a young age, I realised that if you don't use it, you're going to lose it. And I used it throughout my life, and it's worked, and I'm here today.
That's incredible. Now, you said you didn't finish your education. How was your childhood? Can you paint a little bit of a picture of what that was like? Yeah,
look, my parents are both Italian, came here after World War II. They met here in Australia. They got married. So my upbringing was, the typical Italian family. Dad worked, mum stayed at home. I have a younger sister. Grew up as Catholics, very strong Catholic family home. So, but I knew what Christmas meant. I knew what Easter meant. I knew what, King of Kings would be on, Good Friday. That was as far as I knew about, Christianity as far as my faith today. But I grew up, when I say strict home, I wouldn't say strict, but mum and dad did give me, instill discipline, respect, and how to treat others. I mean, that's something that I thank them for. But it's funny because when I was born, mum and dad never spoke English to me. They only spoke Italian. till I went to school at the age of 5. So really, when you look back at my adversity and challenges, it actually started when I was 5, because when I went to school, a Catholic school in Newcastle, I had no idea, what they were talking to me. All my friends at school, the young kids, I had no idea what they were talking to me about. And so that was my first challenge. And I cried for months. But I look back now and I thank my parents, because I now understand the Italian language and the English language. But at the time, and I think that's a rule in life, whilst you're going through that storm, you think, why? You ask me why. But later on in life, you understand why you're going through that. And now I look back and think, Mum and Dad, thank you, for what you did, because I do now know 2 languages rather than 1.
Although he slowly learned English, Peter's Italian heritage still haunted him at school and made his life miserable.
I'm 60, right? So we're talking back a long time ago. I grew up, unfortunately, in Australia, the days of the, go home your wog and, have you got your salami sandwich today? And, so I went through all that. And I started to not like school. I started to, hate the teachers, not because they did anything wrong to me. I just went through that, being picked on at school. I wasn't a tough guy back then. And at the age of 14, 15, I was in high school, Morris Brothers in Hamilton. And I just said, no, I'm leaving school. I just don't want to be here anymore. And I got a job, at a pizzeria, would you believe, I look back now and people ask me, would I change it, anything? No, I wouldn't, because it was all part of my journey. But yeah, so that's why I say to people, I don't have a high school certificate, don't have a higher school certificate. I've got nothing. No certificates at all to show my education or formal education. But I went through life lessons and the University of Life, and I've qualified and I've passed. And now today I'm helping others around the world.
Peter remained at the pizzeria for a few years. And when he was around 21, he had the strangest encounter.
It was about 2:30 in the morning. I was still living at Mum and Dad's, obviously, like a good little Italian boy. And I woke up, Georgia. I woke up and it was just like go and check on your sister. Now, my sister, Rosanna, she's 2.5 years younger than me. It was like this urge, go and check on her. Don't know why. It was just like a feeling. So I thought, okay. So I got up and I quietly went down the hallway back towards the front of the house where Mum and Dad was, and next door was Rosanna, my sister. And I sort of just, where the door was, I looked and she was facing the wall. She was asleep. But I noticed there was a glow. And I thought, did she leave her lamp on? But her lamp is a lot like a yellowy colour, but this was a bright colour. So as I looked closer, I got closer into the doorway. I noticed Jesus. There was a man there with his hands over my sister's bed like this. And I knew he was Jesus, and I went, oh my God. And I walked into the room. It was an automatic thing. But as soon as I walked into the room, Georgia, what happened was I fell to my knees and my hands and face at his feet. Now, I can tell you right now, I literally felt, I could smell the skin. I knew that was Jesus. I started to cry. I wanted to look up at him, but there was like a force holding me down. And at that point, I felt his hand on my shoulder, my right shoulder. As I was on my knees, he put his hand on my shoulder and he said to me, Peter, what are you crying for? I couldn't answer him. I wanted to, but I couldn't answer him. And then he said this. He said, I'm going to tell you 2 things today, and I need you to remember this. He said, 1, I'm going to be with you no matter what. 2, know that I love you unconditionally. Now go away and be happy. And that's all I remember. And that's the honest truth. That's all I remember. Even to today, people ask me, I've had interviews, and that's all I remember. And pretty much not long after, it all started for me.
Soon afterwards, Peter left the pizzeria and started working at a place called Legal and General, which specialised in sales, marketing and financial advice. Soon afterwards, his first real trial began, when he met a girl.
I met a girl in Newcastle, and Italian, and like a young 21-year-old and this beautiful Italian girl and a family I wanted to impress. So because I was working Legal in General and we were doing financial planning and stuff, at the time her father and her brother had just been retrenched and they had a bit of money. We're talking a substantial amount of money. Back then we're talking, 280,000, and I'm talking 1985 or give or take, it was a lot of money. So I said to them, come and invest and do this and do that and this variable rate. And I remember them saying, look, Peter, we'd be more comfortable if you a fixed rate. We don't want variable. And I'm going, no, look, it's returning an average of 19, 20% the last 5 years. Pepsi, Cola, at the time, Macintosh, whatever, these companies involved, So I'm trying to impress them more than anything. So against their will, they put the money in to the stock market, into these variable rate. Well, in 1987, and you're probably too young to remember, but in 1987, we had one of the biggest stock market crashes in Australia. And people can Google it and they find out. So really what happened was that money, on paper, went down to around about $100, give it, whatever it was. But try and tell anyone, let alone an Italian, that it's only on paper. Don't worry about it. So they were very upset. I saw that. So stupid me, what I did was like a lot of people do. I reacted. I didn't respond. So I started to, my friends and other people I knew, asking them to invest with me to put it in their account, to bulk it back up. And so that Rob Paul to pay Peter style thing, and that's where, I was trying to do the right thing, but, it didn't happen. Long story short, police got involved because I went to the police, or lawyers went to the police, and I went backwards and forwards to court, never had a jury until the day I went to court, and they gave me 2 years to go and was sentenced to jail. What I didn't know, Georgia, was that my barrister at the time said to the judge who he knew, Newcastle, what are you going to do to my client? And he goes, look, he's never been in trouble with the law. Suppose his first offence, white collar, we'll probably garnish his wages and just pay the other people back over a certain time. And my barrister turned around, apparently, I found this out later, said, no, that's not going to happen. I don't want him under their thumb for the next 15 years. What's the alternative? Well, he goes in jail, comes out, clean slate, starts again. He goes, that's what we're going to do. Now, this was done even without my knowledge. So,
what?
Yeah. So, that's a fact. And, but, I lived with that.
When you found that out, would you have, this sounds like a silly question, would you have rathered the alternative?
Do you know what, Georgia? Again, when I was interviewed in the past, people have asked me, going back your life, would you change anything? Looking back, everything. And no. At the time, would I? I can't answer that. I'm not sure. Because when I found out when I was in jail, I was numb for a week or so, but I just took it on the chin because he kept saying, but when you get out, Peter, you got your whole life, clean slate. There's nothing holding you back. Do whatever you want to do. And I think that was overriding my negative thoughts. So I accepted it back then, over 30 years ago. I went to Maitland first, which is a max security. And, so that was an experience. Let me tell you, that was real experience for me. The first night I remember was a Thursday. Oh, so just so you know, what happens is, so when they came down to pick, I was downstairs. They took me downstairs. They asked me to take my tie off, my belt, my shoelaces off. So 4 hours went by, and they said, it's time for you to go to Maitland. So what they do is they handcuff you. So I had handcuffed to me, and then handcuff you to another inmate. So in case you want to do the runner or vice versa, they're going to take each other. You got to take them with you. So anyway, we get in the van. It's about a 45-minute drive. Let me tell you something. This guy that I was handcuffed was a Serbian guy who's been in and out of jail apparently for like 22 years. And he was swearing at them, calling them every name, which I won't say on here. And I'm saying to him, shh, don't get, yeah, they're all dogs, you don't understand. And I thought, is this what I've got to look forward to for 2 years? So 45 minutes, he used every word you can think of. And I'm just thinking, God, please help me here. Anyway, so we get to Maitland, usual thing. You have to front the people. There's about 8 of them, mixed, male and female, probably 2 females, the rest were males. And you have to basically strip down naked. And like you hear or watch here on the movies you're watching, you have to squat and your hand through your hair and make sure you've got no drugs, and like to ask you questions while you're still, standing there naked. They put me in the first night with 3 other inmates. Let me tell you, it stunk. There was Penthouse magazines, Playboy everywhere. I went to sleep that night there, one eye open, I didn't sleep at all because I didn't know what to expect, never been there before, watched movies. So get up the next morning, rice bubbles, cup of coffee, that was breakfast, and I went into the yard. This is October, it was October, so it was warmish, and I decided to sit right in the corner and just check things out for a few hours and just see what was going on. As I'm sitting there, 3 bikies started to walk towards me. And they come up to me. And I'm sitting down, they're standing over me. One guy goes, "Hey, is your name Prinzio?" Now, I can't say to him, "No, my name is Smith," because I don't look like a Smith. So I said to him, "Well," I said, "Mate, how do you know my name?" He goes, "Listen, my name is Dave Fennell. They call me Jack, Robbo," and I forget the third guy's name. I truly do. I can't remember what he said. He goes, "We're here to look after you." I said, "What?" "You're under our wing as of today." I said, "Listen, Dave or Jack, whatever your name is." I said, "Mate, I've never been to jail, but I've watched movies, and I know that you do me a favour, then you want a favour for me. I don't want any problems. Please, I'm begging you." He swore at me and pretty much said, "Yeah, shut up. You don't understand." I said, "No, I don't understand." He goes, "Don Geddes." I said, "Yeah, Don Geddes was my barrister." He goes, "He's been looking after us for 18 years. He tipped us off that you were coming in." And that's what happened. So remember I said the barrister did a deal that said, "Look, now don't garnish his wage, put him in. When he comes out clean soap, I'll do the rest." Well, that's what he did. He tipped him off and said, "There's a guy coming. This is his name. Look after him. Make sure no one goes near him." Well, pretty much that was it. The word got out that I was under their wing and no one was to approach me or come near me. So to this day, I'm still friends with Jack, David. He lives up the Central Coast, Tukley. And, so we became close in there.
After a stint in Maitland Maximum Security Jail under Jack's wing, Peter was transferred to a minimum security prison about an hour and a half away, St Heliers in Muswellbrook.
The day they sent me there, which was about 5 months after, they actually, it was funny, when they said, "You got someone coming with you," I thought, "Oh, here we go." It was Jack. It was that guy. They actually sent him with me. And this is the exciting part. Get to Muswellbrook. It's a working type camp, I call it. And about 2 months later, I get elected as jail delegate to represent 276 inmates. Not that I put that on my resume, but I was.
What does that involve?
Well, it means that you once a month negotiate with the top boss there, the superintendent, things. So if any of your listeners or anybody has the unfortunate circumstance you have to go visit someone at Muswellbrook, and there's a tennis court there, I got the tennis court. I negotiated that. I negotiated ping pong tables and the computers. Back then it was just coming out, desktop computers. So I did all the negotiation. And I remember that the old days, and I'm not very tall, and Mr. Chisholm was like about 7 foot, And I remember when I used to have, after about the 4th or 5th meeting, you could still smoke in the office those days. And I'd walk in and he'd be going, "Sit down, Prinzio." So I'd sit down and he goes, "Listen." He goes, "I know you're not the normal inmate here. I know you're smarter than them. Tell me what you want, If it's within the budget, okay, I'll sign off on it. And that's how the reply I had with him. So I had a lot of, I started to get a lot of respect from a lot of the inmates that used to come to me and used to ask me because couldn't read, couldn't write. And this is why today I'm very much against people because you've been to jail or someone's been to jail, they brand them or they judge them. Because let me tell you, there is multi-billion-dollar ideas with people who are in jail but never had the chance to fulfill their dreams because of circumstances. There was a lot of people I met in there that were there for circumstance, not because they were criminals, like with me. I remember when I got out, people say, there's that crim, I'm not a crim. I was just a circumstance. I did something stupid. I tried to do the right thing. It didn't work. Okay, I paid the price for it. But I started to help people when I was in there. And that's why I knew my purpose, my calling was, I've got to help people. There are people that are doing it tough because I walked around with a smile like you see now all the time. The day that I was released, 2 years later, the day I was released, they asked me, they said, right, you are on the 31st of October, 1 minute past midnight, or you can wait 9 o'clock the next morning. And I said, no. 1 minute past midnight, I'm out of here. Normally when someone gets released, there's 1 to 2 officers that will walk you to the gate, unlock you, and see you later. That night, I had about 8 of them to come to get me. And they're walking down, and I remember before he unlocked the door, he looked at me and he goes, listen, we wish that a lot of the inmates were like you. You make our job much easier. We don't want to see you back here, but we want to say thank you for what you did. 3 or 4 of them were crying. They hugged me. And I knew then, I thought, wow, you know what? I've impacted them too. Because of my attitude towards them. I never used to have a go at them. I used to call them sir, madam, please. I did the right thing. Some of the inmates used to say, they're dogs, they're this. But I never did that because my parents told me, respect. Treat others like the good Bible says. Treat others like you like to be treated. And that's what I did. And and 2 years later, I was released back into society.
Peter vowed to never return to prison, a promise he has kept his entire life. But others he met weren't so fortunate.
When I was in Maitland, this guy was finishing 8 years for armed robbery. And he was such a nice guy, like he never started trouble in that. And I said to him, Tony, what are you going to do when you get out? He goes, what am I going to do? He goes, I know nothing. I've been here all my life in boarding school, in and out, boys' homes. And he goes, I'm going to get out. I'm going to do another armed robbery, but I won't kill anyone because armed robbery, if you do a robbery is one thing. If you do armed robbery, listen to this, you get longer sentence, right? Because it's armed robbery. I've got a roof here. I've got 3 meals a day. I've got people who like me. I've got no one out in the real world. I've got no family. I don't get respected. Everyone looks down at me. He goes, Peter, I'll get out and come back in and probably do another 7, 8 years and keep going. Now that to me stayed in my subconscious. I thought, wow.
Because that's so many people's stories.
That's exactly right. Young people, elderly people. This guy was in his, I don't know, late 30s, maybe getting close to 40. And he said, what am I going to do out there, Peter? I won't be able to get a job. People look down at me. I'll go and do an armed robbery and I won't. He said, I've never killed anyone. I'll never hurt anyone. But because I might be holding that gun or whatever, you normally get 7, 8 years. He goes, and then I've got another, a roof over my head and meals a day, 3 meals a day and everything else. And he can go to the gym and get respected. And that's sad. When you think that society, that's what's happening, and I say this, on stage to everyone, if we do not get our young people right today, their mindset, if we don't get it right, especially what we've been going through, in 20, 30 years' time, we're going to have a big problem in this country, actually around the world. You know why? Because those young people today, year 11 and 12, are our future leaders. politicians, parents, teachers, leaders in Christianity, whatever. But if their mind is not right, we're going to have a big problem. And that's what I'm trying to do now, is to get to schools, to get to these people and give them hope, give them a future by saying, hey, you have got a future, you have got a purpose, and I'm going to help you find it. Because everyone has a purpose. I believe everybody does. You've just got to find out what it is and then go for it and never give up. So 2 years, then I got out.
How was the adjustment back into the real world, as you call it?
Look, you know what, Georgia, it was hard. Look, 2 years is a long time. When you think about it, 1 day, 2 days, 3, so you're talking 700 odd days. It was hard. And that's why you've heard the saying, being institutionalized. Well, that's what a lot of them do. Like this guy, Tony, that's what he was. He was just felt secured and happy to be in these four walls, because out there he had nothing. And that's because his mindset was, I can't think big enough. I can't dream big enough. I don't believe in myself. I have no faith in myself. That's why he wanted to go back in. And that's why I want to try and change. So for me, can I tell you, you know what changed me in there? Well, there's what they call a weekly buy-up in jail. So that means if you earn $15 a week, whatever it is, you can buy up chips, Coke, whatever. There's a buy-up. And then there's a section there, there's the paper and magazines. Now, the majority of the inmates, when I say the majority, I would say all of them, would be ticking that they want Penthouse, Playboy. Unfortunately, that's what they wanted. Then there's a section if it was a special order, and no one ever used to fill that out. Well, I did. You know what I put on there? Success magazine. That I had the officer come to me and goes, mate, what is this? I said, what do you mean? It's a magazine. Never heard of it. I said, well, I know for a fact that they sell it in news agencies. That's what I want. So whilst I was in there, I was actually reading success magazines, which would pick, different stories of people who was down and out and became successful. So I used my 2 years to educate myself, to inform myself, to give my subconscious and give me a second chance when I get out. And that's what I did. I read good books. Obviously, I prayed every day. And, so I was building myself up for the release. Was it hard? Of course it was. There was things that I went, wow, just it feels like you hadn't seen for 20 years. But I adjusted. I was okay.
Peter adjusted quickly, and before long, he was flexing his entrepreneurial muscles with a new business idea.
Well, I knew that back in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, the big thing was the rag trade. I set up my own label, and I started to get into suits and shirts and all this sort of stuff. And I did that. I had a little bit of money, and I started. And then one day, I get a phone call that said Paul Harrigan. Now, Paul Harrigan was the chief in Newcastle, was the captain of the Knights. We're talking in the early 90s, right? And a state of origin captain and the Kangaroos. So I get a phone call saying, mate, Paul Harrigan wants to catch up with you. I was telling him about you got your own label and that. I said, with me? I said, let's do it. So we caught up in a place in Derby Street, in the cafes there, and it was him and his manager. I didn't know at the time that his manager, who was his brother, was also an ex-cop, but it was his manager. Anyway, Paul said this to me. He goes, Peter, I want my own label. It's called The Chief, right? The Chief. And I want T-shirts, caps, hoodies, jackets. I want you to do everything. I want you to put it together, I'll give you an order, and then I'll buy off you and I'll sell it. I said, fine. He said, but I want you to do everything. Get the embroidery, get it all ready. You do all that, and then I'll do the rest. I said, fine. I didn't have the money, but I had to look like, fake it till you make it. So I looked like, yeah, I can control it, but I didn't have the money. So I had to go borrow $80,000 to get all the material, the embroidery, do this. I had to get an office to set up, because this was going to be a big order, and then an ongoing order. So I did all that. I think it was about 2.5 months went by. Then he called me. He said, Pete, can we catch up at the same cafe again? He said, I want to discuss something with you. I said, yeah, no problem. I thought, here's my order. So he turned up and he said to me, I need to ask you a question. I said, sure. He said, have you been to jail? And I said, yes. I said, yeah, but I said it was a year and a half, 18 months ago. I didn't murder anyone. I said it was just a white collar thing. I said an investment thing went bad. And he goes, no, I get that. He said, I know that. He said, but I need to tell you this. He said, there's myself and Laurie Daly, who are the Nike at the time, were the poster boys. And he goes, if the media catch on to this, he said, what the front page will be, Paul Harrigan, the chief, in bed with an ex-creme. He said, that's what they'll do. Because he said, that's the media. And he said, my manager and my publicist, he said, I can't afford that. Not with the contract I've got with Nike and the Australian football and all this. So he said, I'm sorry. He stood up, he shook my hand. He says, it's not you. You're a great man. He said, but I have to cut the ties right now. And he walked off. And I remember I'm sitting there going, hang on. I've just got all this material, and I can't sell it. I owe my mate 80 grand. What am I going to do with all this? And after that, I thought, Georgia, you know what? This is it. I'm going to leave Newcastle because it's a small town. Everyone knows each other, and I'm going to go to Sydney. And I moved here, and it was about 27 years ago, and I moved to Sydney, and I started a new life.
Thank you to Peter de Prinzio for sharing his story. The second and final part will be available next episode. To find out more about Peter and his work, including his upcoming speaking events, you can visit his website at peterdeprinzio.com.au or check out his Facebook page. And that information is in the show notes. I'm Georgia, and thank you for listening to this episode of Finding Hope. I'd love to hear your feedback. You can rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast, as well as sharing it with your friends, which is always really helpful. And if you or someone you know has a story of hope to share and you'd like to be interviewed for the podcast, I would love to hear from you. You can leave a comment on the Finding Hope page at hopepodcasts.com.au. For now, I'll leave you with this verse. And without faith, it is impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him. Hebrews 11, verse 6. Catch you next time.
This is a Hope 1032 production. Thanks for listening.